Hey, what's up, man?
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. What's going on?
Not much. Where you where you bunker down at?
I'm home in Texas.
Cool. How are things down there?
They're fine, actually. Obviously people are stressed. Hold on, I'm fucking with this so that I can get it in a smart place. Actually, it's probably better if you don't see my hair. um, yeah, no, it's pretty good. Dallas County is locked down, um, so there's not there's not a ton that we can do. I'm staying home. I got one of those jobs. You know what I mean? Like you, like I travel, 240 days a year or something for work.
Right.
So um it's unusual. This is this is the longest amount of time that I've been home in probably the last 10 years.
I think
It's very unusual.
I'm about to say I think that's the case for most of us because even on the media side you're usually on the go, and especially
Yeah.
as spring comes. I mean that's like they lift the gates and you're usually
Hmm.
out there until the end of the year really. So this has been different, definitely, just to have a little bit more downtime and time to kind of. But for me, it's been nice because it's given me time to really relax and think and get things like this going that I've kind of pushed around for a lot. But if we were an unusual setup, I probably wouldn't be doing this. But it's been fun to kind of have an excuse to get a little bit creative and think out the box and have time to experiment, basically. So
Yeah, and we're kind of trying to do the same thing. I mean, at first it was like, there's parts of every one of our sales reps territories that aren't like locked down, non-essential, all that stuff, which I don't know what I think about that. But there are still parts that aren't locked down. So like, do I, in the beginning it was like, do I continue to send my sales reps? What's up, Philly? Uh, my I was I was like, do I continue to sell my sales reps to the parts of the territory that they're allowed to travel, let them continue to make money because obviously, our sales reps get paid commission and salary. Um, so it's their money too, right? So the decisions that I make, if I tell you stay at home, now you can't sell stuff. You know what I mean? So it
right,
does affect your money. Um, so I was I was like, no, I don't think that makes a lot of sense because they got families, they've got everything. Um, so what we're doing is we're focusing on trying to come out of this better than we went into it, right? So whereas a lot of people, you see people on the internets all the time that are like, you know, I want to learn a language or I want to learn how to, play chess or something like that. Well, we're focusing a lot on, sales training. So going through routing and calling plans and events and how do we make our events better for our customers? How do we make our swag better for our customers? Um, how do we do everything? How do we provide better customer service on a daily basis? How do we make our routines easier and better for our customers? So there's a ton of stuff that we're doing um, on these Zoom calls and otherwise that are allowing us to get better um, during this time. Um, and fortunately, and I've said this quite a few times, people have reached out as there have been layoffs and stuff like that, and they've been like, "Oh, what are you guys going to do? Are you worried?" Blah blah blah. This is one of those times where it's good to have my accent in the cigar business because I'm a financial manager, right? Like this is what we're good at.
right.
Glenn was a banker. I was an executive in a Fortune 500 company. Um, Ward, who's my operations guy, who's a rock star. He's got a background in entrepreneurship and in management. So like this is what we're good at, right? Um, we have a great team. Like Glenn is a fabulous with marketing and new product development. But the division of labor is Glenn focuses on the finance stuff. I focus on the sales infrastructure, and Ward, my other partner, focuses on the operations. So that's sort of the division of labor. So this is what we're very good at. So we don't have to worry. If we didn't sell another cigar for months and months and months, we would not have to lay anybody off or let anybody go or anything like that because this is what we're good at. We plan for things like
Well,
this.
it's definitely good to hear that because I mean, there's unfortunately, I mean, these kind of situations, unexpected, kind of putting a little bit of a spotlight, I should say, on the weaknesses at certain companies.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and that's not any particular company. That's not either side of the business, or like whether you retail or manufacturer. I mean, it's helped show like where, like you said, there's a need to focus to get yourself
yes,
built back up for when things are. And I was, thinking the other day, I was like, if people individually and as a company aren't using this time wisely to, like you said, to improve in places where you don't really need to be together, but you can still learn and improve on how you do business. I mean, it's just a big waste, of an opportunity. Basically, it's an
I fully
opportunity to
agree.
learn.
We never, ever, ever get the opportunity as a sales business. I always tell the sales reps, like, sales cures all ills, right? Like, it's if your numbers are good, I don't care if you're doing it from your bathtub, as long as your customers are happy and the numbers are there, right? So it's like, um, this is one of those opportunities where the only way to make sales in the cigar business is be good on the phones, be good on email, be good on the road, be great to your customers, take care of everybody, and have a wonderful product. This is one of those times where we never get the opportunity to
Right.
sit and be at home and not work. You know what I mean? Like, not work in the conventional sense.
Right.
Because, being a cigar rep is a really easy job to not do. You know, as a lot of retailers that might be listening might have seen, or as a lot of reps know. I mean, it's an easy job to not do. You can wake up in the morning, and I'm not calling you at 8:30 in the morning saying, "Hey, are you up? Did you eat breakfast? Are you on the road?" It's, you got to be able to wake up, get in your car, and have a plan for the day to take care of your customers. And now you got to do that every day. You know,
Exactly.
now we can't do that even if we wanted to. So how do we take this opportunity where we're at home and we're working and we have to justify and account for our time and come out of it better? And that's really the emphasis that we're putting on. So
Yeah.
the sales training, the social media stuff, taking a good hard look at our accounts and figuring out what we can do for them. So I think we're taking chicken shit and turning it into chicken salad, you know. So it sucks that my guys can't work and I can't work and I can't travel. I don't know what to do when I'm not on a plane twice or three times a week, you know?
I
So
know.
I
I
don't know.
mean, you're literally one of those people who kind of live on a plane.
I don't know what to do. I really don't. I can't rejoin society. Time has no meaning. I'm like waking up at 4 in the morning, looking around like, what year is it? Like Rip Van Winkle. I don't know what's going on, but I'm trying. I'm trying here. I bought a lawnmower yesterday. So I've never had to buy a lawnmower before. Usually we have landscapers, but they're non-essential.
uh,
So I'm like, my
having to
house is,
adapt.
yeah, my house is overgrown. And it's very weird. Strange times, man.
It is.
Strange times.
So what I've been trying to do with deep cuts is, there's so many people that I know from the cigar industry and, a little bit of some other outside of cigars, but there's so many people that I know and I've done stories on in the past. And, with the story, depending on what magazine you do it for, it's very limited on what you can talk about. So you
Yeah.
can only go so far. If it's a trade magazine, you can only, it's mostly just about business. If it's a more consumer leisure kind of thing, then you can only go, you can't talk about business as much because it starts boring people or they feel like it's a little bit outside of what you're supposed to do. So with deep cuts, this is like, it's kind of my thing. It's my platform, as an editor, as a writer, as a person who's doing media, to kind of talk to people and trying to get a little mix of both and get to know people and get people who are listening to learn about some other brands that they may have never paid attention to before this. And now that we're all kind of at home, we have this ample time on our hands, a little bit more than usual. We're not having to commute. We're turning to Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and for just information, just to get to know some other brands, so that when all this kind of clears up a little bit, I mean, it's never going to be completely gone, but when we can get outside of our houses and travel and go back to cigar lounges and stores in general, we might look at a product completely different way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is a cool thing to do. And people are looking for stuff to do. I know I'm looking for stuff to do every day. So it's like this is definitely a cool way to get to know some people and tap your audience, tap my audience, get to know
Right.
different people. So no, I think it's cool. It's a good idea.
So, I mean, you touched on it when we were just talking a few minutes ago, but just give us like a little background on you. Like before you got into the cigar industry?
Um,
What were you doing? What was your focus?
so I had a pretty unconventional start in business. My family, we we grew up. My family is not like a college oriented kind of family. You know, it was always a very blue collar kind of upbringing and stuff like that. Um, Grandmother was a foster mother and all that stuff. Grew up not particularly well off or anything like that. And so I had no clue what I was going to do. No, none. And then my family, we were able to move out of we were in a kind of a tougher area when I was growing up. We moved out of there. We moved to Rhode Island, to a nice, like, quiet, suburban kind of area.
Hmm.
And that's where I went to high school. I did all my elementary school, middle school, all that stuff in this tougher area. Then I went to this nice, kind of shiny suburban town, and people were different, man. Like, people were different, and I still didn't know what I was going to do, but I was trying to get involved. And I always thought I was going to be an attorney. Um, and so when I was in high school, I wrestled all through high school and everything like that. And so I was going to this gym, and two mortgage guys that just got out of after the housing bubble burst. Is the wind annoying?
No, you're fine.
Okay. And so they started a gym, one of those Anytime Fitness franchises. And it was the first one in Rhode Island. And I didn't want to pay for my membership. So I helped them by cleaning machines and stuff like that when I was in high school. And I had other jobs. I worked at a Christmas tree farm in the winter, and I did all kinds of different stuff. But like, I was doing this gym thing, and then all of a sudden they were like, "Oh, well, the manager's got to take a day off, so why don't you sell memberships?" So I started selling memberships, and then they wanted to open up a second gym, and so they were like, "Well, why don't you go and be the sales guy at this gym while we're building it?"
Hmm.
And I was like, "Well, how's that going to work? Like, how do you sell memberships to a gym that doesn't exist yet?" And they were like, "I don't know. It sounds hard, but figure it out." So I literally sat in this stupid tent out in front of a gym with a picture of like what the gym might look like someday, and was like, "Can I have your social security number, credit card, bank account, routing number, all that stuff, and sign up for a 24-month membership of this gym," right? And so that was my first job in sales, was sitting in this tent in a Stop and Shop grocery store plaza, and tried to sell memberships to people. And we ended up opening up the gym with like 500 members
Wow.
before it even opened. So it was like unbelievably successful. And my father was like, my father always told me when I was growing up, don't be good at anything you don't want to do. And this was one of those things where they were like, "Oh, shit, well, you did a great job. So why don't you manage this club now?" So now I'm 19 years old. I'm a freshman in college, and I'm managing a gym in Narragansett, Rhode Island, which was, an hour away from where my college was. So I took all my classes Tuesday and Thursday, and then I would Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I would work. So I worked full time and went to college, and I commuted back and forth all across the state. And then they were like, "Well, we want to open up this other gym." So they sent me out there. So I opened up another gym, and then I opened up another. And by the time I graduated from college, I had opened up like 14 of these gyms for these guys.
Wow.
And so other kids are like, I'm on the swim team, and I'm like, well, I manage, a several $1 million P&L. And companies were like, "Well, why don't you come and work for us?" And so I started, I wanted to go to law school, so started down that path. And shortly into there, I had a professor from the college that I had gone to, and he was like, he had a fraternity brother that he wanted me to meet. So I went, met this guy. I wasn't in a fraternity, but the professor was. And I met this guy, and turns out he was the VP of Human Resources for Target. And he was like, "You want a job?" And I'm like, "Oh, I have a job." And he's like, "You want a better job?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so he offered me a great opportunity to become an executive for Target. And in a very short period of time, keep in mind, I'm still in college at this point. I'm a junior in college. And he was like, he was like, "Well, you can do an internship until you graduate." I'm like, "Bro, I'm way beyond an internship. I got 14 gyms that I manage. I'm the director of sales for. I'm like, I need a real job. I got a quality of life that I got to maintain and stuff." And he was like, "Fine." So they waived my degree requirement and let me start as an executive for Target through this
Wow.
training program. So by the time I graduated, I was a salaried executive for Target for a Fortune 80 company at that time. And so I was the youngest guy in my job by, a decade. And it was a really unusual experience because I looked young. I still look young, but I've always looked young, and I was even younger then because I was actually young, and because it was 10 years ago or more than that. And so it was like they were like, I would walk into a store and they'd think I was a cashier or something like that, and I'd be like, no, this isn't my high school job. Like, I'm a salaried executive regional guy. And so I started working for Target, managing merchandising and sales direction and merchandising direction, stuff like that, as a regional MM. And then I got headhunted, went to Bed Bath & Beyond, and I was a senior planner for Bed Bath & Beyond, so buying and issuing merchandising direction for a chain that they owned. And then I became friends with Glenn when I was still at Target. Glenn Case, the owner of Kristoff. And I met him at a cigar event, and he started doing cigar trivia at this event. And so every question that he asked, if you got the answer right, he would give you a cigar. And it just so happens the day before I went to this event, I was in that cigar lounge, and they had a magazine, and they had written an article on Kristoff in the magazine. And it was this guy who came from finance, and he had just started this thing, and he was trying to grow the business and blah, blah, blah. And so when I showed up to the event and he started doing trivia, I'm like, well, fuck, I'm the only guy who studied. Like, it was like I read this whole article on the company. So he would ask a question. I swear, if he asked 10 questions, I must have gotten 8 of them right? So I fleeced him for half a box of cigars. And finally, he's like, comes up and he's thanking everybody for coming to the table, and he comes up to me and he's like, man, you really know a lot about Kristoff. And I'm like, what can I say? I'm just real sensitive to the industry, and I'm like, totally full of shit. And he was like, why don't you and so he was thanking everybody for coming. And keep in mind, there were like 120 guys at this event. And so it was a big thing. And he's smoking a box press cigar. And I had never seen a box press cigar from Kristoff before. And so it just so happened that it burned up to the label at the time that he was at our table. So he takes the label off, throws it in the ashtray, and walks away. So when he walks away, he has a couple more drinks, and he's like, I'm going to give anybody 5 cigars if they know the answer to this next question. What's the name of my new line? And I'm like, oh, shit, the label's in my ashtray. I'm like, I knew he had never made a box press cigar before. So I pick up the label, I read it. It says Galarone Series. I destroy it with my lighter. I light it on fire, destroy the evidence, and then I raise my hand. I'm like, that's the Galarone Series. And he's like, brother, how did you know that? And I'm like, nah, I'm just real sensitive to the industry, blah, 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 blah. And so he's like, would you ever want a job? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm like, doing what? And he's like, I don't know, but write down your name and number. So he gave me one of his business cards. I wrote, yes, I was smoking cigars at that time. Since I was 18, I was smoking cigars in lounges. So he gave me one of his business cards. I wrote my name and phone number on the back of his business card, gave it to him. He said, I'll call you on Monday. Send me your resume over the weekend. I make a resume, he said, like I didn't have a resume. So I wrote my name and phone number on the business card. I emailed him my resume, and he calls me on Monday and he goes, brother, I thought you said you worked at Target. I said, no, I work for Target. I don't work at Target. I'm not collecting cards or anything like that. I'm an executive, right? I went to law school. Like I've got a real job. And he was like, oh my God. He's like, I don't think I can afford you. And I'm like, no, I don't think so either. And he's like, maybe. And he's like, maybe in a couple years. So I'm thinking, whatever, man. Like, I'm never going to hear from you again. You're never going to call me. He called me every month or two for maybe 2 or 3 years, keeping me up to date on like what's going on with the business and how the store is and how the brand is growing and the new cigars that he's doing. And we just stayed in touch. And finally one day, and this time I had gotten headhunted and gone to Bed Bath & Beyond, and he calls me and he's like, I think I can finally pay you. And I'm like, what? And he's like, well, not very much, but I can afford to have a person working for me. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, and it was a huge pay cut from what I was making, obviously at Target. Um, and he was like, but if you do this and if it works, you can hire and train and you'll be running the business for me. Um, by the time it's all said and done. And I was like, I knew I had a great career in retail. I really did. Making a lot of money. I was young. I would have been a climber. I would have kept growing in that business and I would have been doing great. But I knew I would never be able to look at myself if I didn't take a chance on this and try it. And so I said, fuck it. And I went and I quit. And I remember it was the vice president of Bed Bath & Beyond. His name is Danny. And I walked into his office. I'm like, hey, Danny, I'm like, I'm so sorry to say this, but I'm leaving. And he's like, what do you mean you're leaving? And I'm like, for the day? He's like, I don't care, go home.
You're like,
And
no,
I was like,
forever.
and I was like, no, I'm leaving. And he's like, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna go back to Target? Are you gonna do this? And I said, no, I'm gonna go sell cigars. And he's like, do you know anything about it? And I'm like, no. He's like, have you ever been in sales? I'm like, I used to sell memberships at a gym, you know? And he's like, he's like, you're gonna be back in a month. And that was like 6 or 7 years ago that I finally was able to pull the trigger. And so I started as their first in-house sales rep, and then my market paid for the next one, which allowed me to hire and train somebody there, which paid for the next one. So I hired and trained, and now we got six or seven reps across the United States. We've got some independent guys, 9 guys here in the U.S., and then we sell and distribute in 32 countries. So the business is a lot different now.
It's funny, like when you were saying that your first, job was basically selling something that didn't even exist yet and having to get people hyped up for it. I think back to, niche markets like cigars, because often, I mean, you're selling something that necessarily might be coming out a couple months from then, and you might have some samples to give somebody, but you have to sell them on this idea of not just that sample, but that it's going to come up like this could be a big seller for you. So I'm just like curious, like did your experience selling that gym, or the idea of that gym, like has that come up again as you've been trying to sell cigars and like I said, having to sometimes sell the idea of something rather than the actual product?
It was what more than like the selling the idea of something. What I learned from sitting in that tent and trying to sell memberships from a picture of what the gym is going to look like, I learned how to try to build a relationship with people very quickly. You know what I mean? Because at that point, it's you. They've got to trust you that you're not a dude who got a tent and like my hair is like going everywhere right now. But it's no barbers. Barbers are apparently non-essential. Hard times, man. But I learned that you've got to build a relationship with people, and you have to, and they're buying you at that point. You know what I mean? So with the sales reps and with cigars and new product marketing, it's like you might have a sample, you might not have a sample, but the most important thing is explaining to the customers that how you're going to sell through and how it's going to add value in their humidor into their business, And if you don't do that, if they don't trust you and your ability to manage inside of their business, because the way I look at humidors is our Kristoff, whether we have 8, 16, 24 facings, whatever we have in the humidor, it's like that's our storefront. You know what I mean? Those 24 facings, that's my store inside of your store. So how do I make my store as busy as possible? And it's by making sure that the assortment fits what your customers smoke, making sure your customers have a good relationship with the sales rep. So all these things I did learn from sitting in front of a empty building with a picture of what the gym might look like when it's done, So I definitely did leverage that experience. It definitely did make a difference.
And like you said, the relationship aspect is something that kind of gets overlooked sometimes, because
Yeah, for
especially if
sure.
you're when you get into marketing and sales. Sometimes you get into that cycle of relying too much on the brand, especially in the cigar industry. Like if you work with a brand that's been around for a long time, then sometimes you forget that you still need that relationship with the retailer, with the distributor, and with the consumer to really get to push through. Because
Yeah.
without, a brand itself is not a person. It's not a personality. It's just something with a band on it with a nice design that you might like. But sometimes you buy and you interact with the brand because of the relationship you have with the people behind it.
I think that's a huge amount of what sells cigars in a humidor. You know what I mean? It stops being, you know, hey, give me one of those Kristoff cigars. It starts being, hey, give me one of Antoine's cigars. You know, if
Mm-hmm.
you were one of my sales reps or something, it's like, you know what I mean? It's. I think the most important product that we put into the market is the sales rep, 10 times out of 10. I think the relationship with the sales rep supersedes the relationship that the people have with the company many, many times. And the sales rep's ability to add value inside the account, inside the humidor, and to the people that are the guys and girls who are smoking cigars, um, that's the most important thing, you know?
Right. I'm just looking at some of the comments that are coming in. I mean, I mean, Kristoff has some great cigars. I mean, the pissed off Kristoff that comes to that comes to mind because I know that it was one of our top cigars for tobacco
Hmm.
business. Um, I mean, for you, I mean, just getting into a little bit about the brand. I mean, what makes Kristoff basically stand out from everybody else in the market?
Um, so for us, our brand motto and what we have written on the factory walls and what we always train people on is quality, consistency, and availability. Those are the three factors that we manage the business by. So quality, there's a lot of different things that we do. We bunch and to borrow, which is a little bit different than anybody that's watching that might not know that word offhand. Um, those uh, it's the difference between booking, which is one way of bunching, where you press all the leaves of the tobacco into your hand when you're bunching, and then apply the binder, put it in the mold, versus rolling the leaves into the filler components into lazy tubes, which is entubaro tubes, and that's like a bunch of little straws through the filler to kind of bastardize it, right? And so what that does is it creates a natural path for airflow, creates a nice, easy but deliberate draw, and allows, if it draws right, if the air is moving through the cigar right, it's going to burn right, and it's going to taste the way the blend is supposed to come together. If it burns right, is going to come together the right way, right? So that's one of the quality things. Also, because we have that little pigtail thing on the top of our cigars, which is kind of the Kristoff hallmark, um, that allows us to draw test every single cigar that comes out of our factory. So many manufacturers, when they roll a wheel of 50 cigars, they pull one out, cut it, draw test it, put it on that little vacuum that measures the resistance
Mm-hmm.
of air through the cigar. And if that passes, they assume because the same pair made the other 49 cigars in the wheel that the other 49 are going to be good too. But that's only 2% of the sample, right? But if they were gonna cut and draw test every cigar, they wouldn't have any cigars to sell at the end because they'd have to cut them all. Because we have that pigtail, we can apply the wrapper and then draw test it after that's applied. You know, so we can roll the wrapper back, draw test it, and then if it passes, twist it up into the pigtail and get it ready to sell. So every cigar that comes out of the Kristoff factory is draw tested. So we know, again, like we were talking about with the bunching, we know it's going to draw right, which means should burn right, which means it's going to taste the way that we wanted it to taste when we were blending it, right? And in terms of consistency, one of the things that we do differently is many manufacturers, when they buy tobacco from a processor in bales or pilones or whatever, um, it comes to the factory and they immediately go to production with it because it's already been processed and fermented once from that processor. If they do it in the house, the same thing. Um, so um, we get the tobacco from a processor, and then we process it again 2 or 3 more times in house. So what that does is, as the climate changes, the soil changes, you get a certain amount of rain or not a certain amount of rain, right? It's an agricultural product, so it does change. Um, to make it consistent, we take it in and we process it 2 or 3 times again in-house, even though it's been processed once. And that allows the product to be, the tobacco, the raw product, to be much, much more consistent. And so that's one of the things for consistency. And then availability. Anybody that buys Kristoff, any retailer that buys Kristoff, and any customer knows we're in stock. You know what I mean? We're not a company that has perennial back order issues. We are business people, you know. And in my opinion, in the widget selling business, you got to have widgets to sell, no matter what it is. And many manufacturers in the cigar business are plagued with perpetual back order issues, and that trickles down to the customer, you know, the person who's buying the cigar and smoking it. Because many times if the retailer says, hey, look, I ordered it, and it's just not here, the customer's going to be like, what are you talking about? You know, like, what do you mean you ordered it and it's not here? You're just blowing smoke. You know what I mean? It puts the retailer in a really bad position when they have to explain back orders to a customer. And that's something where we clear back orders in 2 weeks, and we very, very rarely are on back orders because of the way that because we have a sophisticated inventory management program. And again, we manage the business like it's a business and not like it's a hobby, and that's paid dividends, and the company's grown significantly over the years. So.
And what country are most of your cigars from?
So we manufacture everything in the Dominican Republic, but because we don't own farms, because none of us are farmers. Like I said, Glenn came from finance, I came from retail. We have a trusted group of farmers in all kinds of different countries. So everywhere from Africa with Cameroon to San Andres in Mexico to Corojo from Nicaragua. So we buy stuff from absolutely everywhere. So I wouldn't say and we're terrible at naming cigars, right? So there's a lot of manufacturers that, you know, like they'll come out and they'll have a cigar and it's called the Edición Limitada, left-handed 1364 or whatever, and you have no idea what any of the names mean. But our Sumatra is called the Sumatra, our Connecticut's called the Connecticut, our Maduro is called the Maduro, right? So if you're a customer and you walk in the humidor and you know you like Maduro, well, look at Kristoff, because it's going to be called the Maduro. You know what I mean?
But that's a good approach to it, because I know, you know, every time I think about writing, for me, I think of Steve Harvey, because he was doing an interview one time, and he was in there, you know, he's gotten into writing books and stuff, and they're like, how do you write your books? He said, well, you know, I write the book and I just write whatever I want to write. He said, then I go down and I dumb everything down so that anybody can read it. He said, because if you have to stop and you have to look up a word, you know, just because you want to feel smart, then it doesn't help. He said, people need to be able to read something real quickly. So sometimes 100%. You need to have a simple name for something. So like you said, because when people go into a humidor, they don't want to spend 5 hours reading the little cards that they have, you know, the little readout cards, this and that, or and they don't always want to ask the retailer, you know, what's the Maduro, they want to find it and get out and go and do whatever they got to do, go to the lounge, sit down with their friends. So that's a cool, you know, a marketing thing or a business thing that I think, you know, more companies should really look at, how to make that experience easy for your consumers.
Yeah, and one of the things that I learned at when I was an exec for Target was the most important thing about merchandising is and retail is the customer being able to find what they want and then buy it and not feel bad about buying it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And if I know if I was going to go into a humidor and I didn't know anything about cigars, and I go and I read something that's Edición 1464, blah, 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 left-handed baseball glove in August, I would pick it up and I'd be like, no, I don't even want to say this. If somebody asks me what you're smoking, I can't pronounce it. So right. I don't want to put myself in a shitty situation. So I don't want to feel stupid about making a decision. And I also don't want to not be able to say the name of the product that I just purchased, right? Which I think is just a duh moment, but it's like, yeah, I want to be able to say it. How many times are you in a store and people are like, oh, what's your favorite cigar? And it's like, oh, I love Olivia and Alex Bradley and, you know, all the and Macanudo and all this stuff, and it's like they can't say any of the names of these cigars. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like just call it the Connecticut, call it the Sumatra, call it the Maduro. That way, the customer knows what they're buying when they get to the section, and they can feel vindicated in making their purchase decision. You know what? I like Maduro. Here's a thing that says Maduro. I know it's a fucking Maduro, and I'm gonna smoke it, and I'm gonna like it because I know I like Maduro, right? So it's making it easy for customers to access the product and feel good about their purchase decision, and retailers making it easy to merchandise so they don't have to constantly explain what the product is, you
Right.
know. So that's kind of the philosophy that we take.
I being in sales especially, and I see that one of our somebody who's watching made a comment about how they love the salespeople that come into their store because they're such great conversationalists. And when I was starting this deep cuts thing, I was thinking, what did I want out of it? I'm not here to get ad money and all that kind of stuff. It's something I'm doing on the side for my, more for myself. But I said I wanted to become a better conversationalist because I think in this day and age with the digital stuff and the texting, you know, we've lost that art of conversation. But conversation is so important to marketing, to sales, to just so many different parts of the business that I think people have, like what we're doing right now. I mean, people have lost that and they don't think about it. I mean, think about when you text somebody, sometimes you just put
Hmm.
K instead of like okay,
Yeah,
you just say K,
yeah,
or or you just put an emoji, emoticon in there, and you just that's your communication. So it's just like so funny that that we're you know they took the coronavirus basically to make us all kind of sit back and get back into the roots of having the conversation and learning how to communicate. And I'm
yeah,
and just speaking to you now, I mean, you learn how communication is such a big part of what we do. And that's regardless of if you sell cigars or if you just, like you said, if you work at a Target, it's the communication, either visual or verbal. Just thinking
yeah,
about how do you, how do people speak to you and what do they ask for? And, I mean, I think a lot of companies are forgetting that now.
yeah, yeah. And it's connecting with customers in the way that they want to be connected with. You know what I mean? Like you see ads all the time of a dude in a tufted leather chair with a scotch and a model on his lap and it's stuff. And it's like, yeah, shit, I would love to do that. But the average cigar smoker that I've met is in jeans and a t-shirt and has a beer in his hand or might have a scotch or a bourbon or whatever. But the whole point is that it doesn't matter,
Right.
right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman or you're sitting there drinking a beer or you're sitting there drinking a scotch or a glass of wine or a water or a diet coke or whatever. It doesn't matter. That's the whole point of cigars. Is it's a little hour and a half vacation that you can take for $10 anytime you want, you know? And when you start getting presumptuous and when you start putting filters on this stuff where it's like you've got to this is the kind of person that smokes cigars. There's no kind of person that smokes cigars. You've got to just have a cigar to be the kind of person that smokes a cigar. And then it doesn't matter if you're a janitor or a doctor or whatever you are, you are having the same kind of conversations, you're talking to the same people, and you're having a great conversation regardless of what it's about. So this is the best thing about cigars is that you can get nerdy with it if you want to get nerdy with it. You can ignore it if you don't want to. If you don't want to get nerdy with it, you can be as exposed or as little exposed to the cigar industry as you possibly want to be, and you're still part of it. In the same way that somebody that's been in it for 10 years has been part of it, you're still part of it. You know, and that's the best thing. And having conversations and hanging out in the lounge, that's the coolest thing about this industry.
Yeah. So I'm curious, and one of the questions I've been asking a lot of people during these interviews is, what have you been learning about yourself that maybe I mean, because I think we've all have been forced to reevaluate how we've been doing business or things that we say, oh, I've never gotten around to that. And now I have time, a little bit more time in my day, especially if you're not commuting. You might have like 2 more hours to your work day that you didn't
Yeah,
have
yeah.
before. I mean, what have you been learning about yourself during this time, especially that maybe are areas that you want to focus on or something that you're like, I've been interested in that and I have a little bit of time to get into it.
I don't know, man. I really don't. That's a really good question. I've learned I'm not capable of rejoining society in an expeditious manner. I've learned that when I'm when I'm not traveling, I'm not 100% sure Um, oh, there goes the neighborhood. My buddy Rocky just joined. It's a toothless redneck. Um, but we, yeah, I've learned that it's really hard. It's really hard when your schedule gets interrupted to find a way to add value on a daily basis. Um, and I've also learned that if I could have the same level of focus that I have right now in regards to accounting for my time, accounting for the sales reps' time, being productive on a level beyond just going and traveling and visiting accounts and stuff like that. If I could add a part of this even to my routine once things get back to normal,
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll be 50% better at what we're doing at a minimum. You know what I mean? And I've also learned how important it is to pay attention to those things. You know, when you're in the grind and you're doing the same thing every day and you're doing your routine and you put in a day's work, you don't realize like what you could have been doing with that time when I'm sitting in the car. Now it's like when I'm sitting in the car with the sales rep and I've got a 3 hour drive to the next thing, it's like there's 1,000 things I now know that I could do. I could,
Right.
I created some new reports that I could analyze that'll give us a little bit better information on customers. I could go live on social media. I could do a podcast or do another interview or something like that. There's 1,000 things that I could do to be productive with my time above and beyond what I've been doing. And I think this has been giving me a really good opportunity to create routines around um, that stuff. You know what I mean? Around stuff, not just my regular job and adding value on a different front. So,
Yeah, and I definitely, hope that Kristoff and every company really kind of uh, feels a little bit more comfortable embracing social media once this thing lifts. Because it's been great on the media side to see so many companies suddenly opening the doors, and you get to see inside the lives, the less polished, it's less of the business suits, less of the curated stuff, and more of like just the real conversations and just real views inside these companies, because I think that's valuable that you don't really get under normal circumstances. Normally, it's just it's a marketing photo, like nice and staged, and
yeah, yeah.
the lifestyle glory luxury photo, and you might get a picture of an event in a store, but that's like all you get. But I think getting to know different people behind the brands is for me, it's been fun to use this month or however long this quarantine goes on for to
Yeah,
really
yeah.
explore that.
And get to know the people, like the
Right.
actual people behind it. You know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? Because I meet people at an event, and it's like, you're in a tailored shirt, wearing a Rolex
Mm-hmm.
and nice shoes, and you're shaking hands and thanking people for coming and stuff like that. But now I'm in my backyard in a comfortable chair, smoking a cigar and talking about whatever you want to talk about. So this is not an opportunity that I get having been in the cigar business and being a principal in the cigar business. This is not an opportunity that I get often. You know what I mean? So this is cool. This is a great value add for everybody. So
Right.
I appreciate you doing this too.
So how do you kind of see this the industry changing because of what's happened? Because the industry is, like you said, it's about traveling. Um, it's about and traveling, and it's about making those relationships to make those sales, and it's about the big events where you're kind of crammed in sometimes with lots of people. I think of Big Smoke and all the different trade shows that we go to. How do we adapt basically to this new reality where some of that stuff might have to change just to kind of
It,
allow us to get back to some type of normal?
Yeah, I think it's not just the cigar industry. I think every industry is going to have to change. You know what I mean? When are people going to feel comfortable going to a movie theater and sitting right next to a stranger again, or
Mm-hmm.
bar stools that are 8 inches apart, or something like that? I was listening to a podcast the other day with John Taffer from restaurant that whatever it is, Bar Rescue,
Uh-huh.
and he was saying he's like, I'm eliminating 30% of all the seating in my bars. He's
Wow.
like, because if you're at a table, you don't want to be sitting right next to some other family eating and stuff like that. You want a little bit of space now. I think people are going to be respectful of each other's space. I think in the cigar lounges at least, I've always been. I'm like anybody that knows me. I've got hand sanitizer in my pocket. I've got hand sanitizer, eye drops, chapstick. I got all that shit on me all the time. On a plane, I have Clorox wipes, and I
Me
wipe down
too.
everything too. And I've done that for years and
Me
years.
too. I was doing that
So,
before, and everybody used to laugh at me. And Ben always laughs because
yep, yep.
whenever we go to like a trade show, or whatever, we're in Vegas, especially. I remember like IPCR 2015, and it was New Orleans, and getting put into a hotel room that obviously had not been used in like years, and it's having like an inch of dust on everything, and I was like, disgusting. And when I go to these trade shows, like I sleep in my regular clothes, like on top of the sheets. I bring a hoodie. I bring my own pillowcase. You
Oh,
know,
really?
I do. I'm just like so like germophobic about everything. You know,
See, I'm in 240 hotels a year, so I can't. I used to have a sales rep in Philly, and she used to bring a whole set of bedding with her.
mm-hmm.
Like
Yep.
she would bring her comforter, her pillowcases, her sheets. She would bring it with her in this big ass trash bag and bring it into every hotel. And I was like, "Can I walk in before you?" Because I'm like, and usually like Capture just posted like, "Yeah, you can't trust hotels." Like you totally can't trust hotels, but you like when you travel as much as me, it's like I try to stay in hotels that I know are going to be nice. And I'm that dude where like I'll go into a room and I'm not staying in like a Super 8 or something like that. You know what I mean? Like I want to stay in nice hotels and or decently nice hotels that are clean, but I will walk into a room and then walk back down to the front desk and be like, guys, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Like I'm not like who lives here? A dog? Like I'm not doing this. Like there's blood on the wall and stuff like I won't do it. And I will go to another hotel and fight it out with the hotel to get my money back or something like that. But
My biggest tip is walk straight into a hotel room, strip all the bedding off, everything, throw it on the floor, and then tell them you need somebody to come up and make your bed, just so you can
yeah.
ensure that you get something new. Because, like I said, when I leave a hotel room, it almost looks like I was never there because everything is immaculately where it was. I've never touched
Yeah,
any
you
part
go
of
and clean
anything.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, for somebody's sake, like just rip everything off the bed.
Housekeeping leaves you a tip when you leave.
They should.
Like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because you know what? Like on the door, I'll put on there. I'll put the do not disturb thing. It'll be there the whole time I'm there. If I'm there for a week, it doesn't even matter.
Oh, I do the same thing. I don't want anybody in my room.
Right. I was like, I'm good. You don't have to come. Like to skip
Yep,
it over. And they'll
yep,
knock on the door. I'm like, no, we're good. Thank you. Click.
yep. I'm cleaning. I'm cleaning. I got my Clorox wipes.
Right.
I already cleaned everything. Yep, I do the same thing, man.
Oh man,
I don't trust anybody.
I don't either. Well, I mean, let's talk a little bit about. I know that Kristoff just released a TAA exclusive.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
know. I saw a few people talking about. So let's definitely touch on that. Just tell us about what that cigar is all about. And
So that's a box press Toro in our San Andreas blend. So it's a Mexican San Andreas Maduro wrapper. It has Nicaraguan filler from 3 different places. It's really, really, really good. And our San Andreas has been 92 rated. It's very popular. Really, really full flavored, full body, a little bit of spice. And we thought that it would be an excellent box press cigar. So we did a Toro 6 1/4 by 54 box press. And so that's an exclusive release to the TAA that is only going to be available for a limited time. It's only going to be eliminated for only going to be there for a limited time. We released 500 boxes at this show, sold out right away, and then when they do the second mini Dream Machine thing in October, we're going to release another 500 boxes then, and then that's it. And then our idea, I think, is every year we're going to release a new box press Toro for our TAA. So we're going to take one of our blends and smoke it and find out what's going to be good in a box press, and we're just going to make a new box press Toro for TAA every year.
do you have any type of summer release planned? I know sometimes because we have a trade show in the summer, PCA, that sometimes Kristoff has a release for that. Do you have one for this year, or how's that going?
We do, and I'm not 100% ready to talk about sort of what the blend's going to be or what it's going to be, but I can tell you we found some really, really interesting tobacco and from a country that nobody typically has worked with in the past, and it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a tobacco that people are going to really want to try. And I've smoked it, and in through the blending process and everything like that. And I can tell you, it's not like anything that we have in our profile, and it's a very interesting, nuanced kind of release. So you'll see that around the trade show time. I think we'll do the release for that, but we're going to have some good media and things like that around it too.
Cool. Be looking out for that.
Mm-hmm.
We have 10 minutes left, so I think it'll be a great time to kind of just, you're such an organized person, which is nice because you're very structured. And I think a lot of people in the industry, I mean, there are a lot of people who are, but I think for you, you're especially organized. So getting into the organization and stuff, like you're in charge of a team, and a lot of people here work with a team or they're in charge of their own teams. What can we be doing going forward to basically make our teams much more efficient, in your opinion?
So for me, the most important thing, like we were talking about a little bit earlier, at this particular time, I think coming out of this better than the way you went into it is the most important thing to pay attention to. So having an emphasis on what are the holes, like for my business, for example, what are the holes in our sales infrastructure that we could plug? What are some opportunities that the sales reps might have that they might not have just had time to address? You know what I mean? Like routing. Is our routing exactly as good as it should be? Is our calling plans exactly as good as it should be? Or is it, oh shit, I forgot to call blah de blah, and then making a phone call, right? Or, oh man, you know what I thought? I thought I was supposed to call you and blah, blah, blah. How do we make it so that stuff? So what we've been talking about a lot is how to stay in touch with your customers in the way that they want to be stayed in touch with. And also having good routines around that thing. And the only thing that we can do now is build routines, because the sales reps aren't on the road, they aren't traveling. So we can take this opportunity without them being out there trying to do their regular grind. We can take this opportunity to get them solid routines around making phone calls, solid routines about planning their schedule and organizing their schedule so they run their schedule and their schedule doesn't run them. Because very often in the cigar business, you'll be in, say you've got 7 states. Well, you'll be in the easternmost state, and then you'll be like, oh shit, you know what? I have an event next week in the westernmost state, and now I can't work my way across the way that I'm supposed to, right? So you let your schedule run you instead of you running your schedule. So now we're focusing on building out, for example, a quarterly schedule that gets submitted to us, right? So how do we account for our time in a meaningful way? Well, it's by doing things like this that are going to add value for the sales reps on the other side of the quarantine and non-essential business closure and stuff like that. And so when we come out of this, we can hit the ground running in an organized, intelligent, and in a better way than we were doing it before this happened. So it's really about adding value for our sales infrastructure, adding value for our customers. Like many manufacturers came out, and again, I'm not saying this is right, wrong, indifferent, whatever, but many manufacturers, I had customers calling me and they'd be like, you'd be amazed at the amount of deals that we're getting emailed from these manufacturers. And from my perspective, that seems entirely tone deaf. You know what I mean? When retailers are closed and laying off their staff and don't have customer flow and their lounges are closed, and now you're going to send them a deal to provide the margin? Well, where the fuck were you when I needed the margin, right? When I was trying to turn product and make money. So I could have been better prepared for this in the first place, right? So instead of doing that, I sent out an email to all of our retail customers and retail partners and said, look, I'm not like Sunglass Hut in your email trying to tell you how to deal with a global pandemic, because I don't know how to do it either. But we're here to offer additional flexibility. We're here to get creative with you as you do your curbside pickups and send you swag and send you promo product and stuff like that. How do we become important to your business in a time when you need us to be important to your business, rather than looking at a retailer and saying, shit, my cash flow position is bad, I need you to place an order? Well, that's not doing the retailer any favors, because that 6-in-1, 7-in-1, 8-in-1 that you just offered them, even if they buy it, it might take them 6 months to turn it, because they don't know when their customers are going to come back. They don't know when they're going to be turning boxes the way that they used to. So that's not really adding value for the retailer. So it's zooming out to 30,000 feet, looking at the retail business the way that it is, and saying, how do we add value for them when in the way that they need us to add value? And how do we come out of this and have the retailer say, you know what? Kristoff was a great partner to us when we needed them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And in the way that we needed them to be a partner. And that's really where my focus is as a vice president of sales, and that's where our focus is as a company, is
But
adding value.
like I said, and it's a great philosophy, and I'm so glad you said that because it reminds me of like almost like a trickle up policy rather than trickle down. So you're not starting
Mm-hmm.
from the Kristoff point of, wow, this has been a bad month. We need to make we need to make up for whatever people not ordering enough and this and that. But instead you're worried, you're thinking about what's going on in the world. This is affecting the consumers, which affects the retailers.
Yeah.
Here we are. We're in a position up here. How can we help everybody else, be okay? So
Yeah, because like I was telling you in the beginning of the video, it's like, at the end of the day, my accent, I can't be like, my family has been blending tobacco for 40 years in Boston. Like, that's not my accent, right? Like, it's like, nobody's going to believe me.
Right.
But what we do know is how to manage the P&L and how to manage the business. So our cash flow position is good enough to where we can employ our people. And that's, like I said before, the number one product we put on the field, the number one product we market is our sales reps. The product has to stand on its own and be great, and we've been doing that. We've been making great product for a long time. But how do we make our sales reps the best partner for the retailer at the end of the day? And that's what we're taking this time to focus on. It's not pushing product. It's being a good partner to the retailer and being the kind of people where at the other end of this, they say, you know what, let's get behind Kristoff in a better way because they were there for us when we needed them.
Well, that's awesome. And we have a couple minutes left. So usually at the end, I like to tell people how they can kind of follow up with you and how they can follow up with Kristoff. So just tell us how we can stay connected to the world of Kristoff.
So Kristoff, our Instagram is at Kristoff_cigars. My Instagram is, as I think it's somewhere on this thing, Jarrid Kristoff Cigars. And our Kristoff Facebook page is Kristoff Cigars, obviously. So we post daily. We repost. A lot of what our social media team does is we take pictures of people enjoying Kristoff and we repost them with your caption and everything. So if you have a good picture of one of our cigars and post it, tag us in it at Kristoff Cigars on Instagram or on Facebook, tag us in it. And there's a pretty good chance that our social media guy is going to scrub it and put it onto our social media thing and give you guys a little shout out too. Because at the end of the day, if we don't have people buying and smoking our cigars, we don't got a business, So all these good ideas and all this business acumen and all that other stuff, it doesn't mean shit if there aren't asses in the seats. So we appreciate everybody for smoking our cigars and for taking the time to learn a little bit about them. And if you have any other questions or anything, feel free to reach out to me or to reach out to the Kristoff page and we can get in touch that way.
Well, I mean, it's been awesome catching up with you. I know we usually see each other at a trade show and there's 10,000 things going on. So it's been nice to have a nice hour, where it's just you and I and everybody who's been able to follow us and tap into the conversation. So just want to thank you for taking an hour out of your day to speak to me and speak to everybody else who listened in. And I look forward to whatever our next encounter is whenever all this is lifted a little bit and then we're in a better position to travel and go on with life as normal.
Absolutely. Looking forward to having a drink and a cigar next time.
Definitely.
All right.
I will. So until our next encounter, look forward to seeing you next time.
Sure thing. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I appreciate it. Thank you, Antoine.
No problem. Thank you.